Speaking of the dirty word DNR, what are we going to do about this turkey litter problem? I'm a turkey raiser for Sara Lee Foods, and they told me I had to do one thing, and the law never stated that, and I said I'm not going to do it. So I went 200A, and you have Department of Ag, DNR, fighting for power. Right now I'm 200A, my dad's a dealer. We spread it all on our own ground. It's all done in a timely fashion. As soon as we're able to spread it, it's spread. It's stored on a solid flat surface or on a grass surface that's flat. It can't go anywhere. First they say we have to have solid concrete with bunkers and everything else, and now they're talking if you pile it in the field you can throw a tarp over it. Where are we on this?
They did put some proposed rules out, I believe it was last week, and those would be that it could be piled in the field with a tarp over it, covered. Those are proposed rules. I believe that they have to go through the EPC as well, but that's what DNR is proposing, and I think that they're fairly happy with those. Now the challenge is it affects other dry litter out there, or dry manure. Also affects cattle manure. And we have deep bedded buildings where folks have built monoslopes or hoop buildings out there, put them all inside because they want to avoid the regulation of 100% containment on outside yards. So they built those buildings and put all the cattle inside, so you keep the water off the manure and you don't have any runoff from those facilities. Now you have a dry pack manure that comes out of a confinement building that falls under the same regulations. And if you require the same kind of covering in a building that maybe is cleaned out every 2 weeks, you got to cover and uncover a pile every 2 weeks to be able to haul that out. If you're hauling out turkey litter, you're probably hauling it out much less frequently than that. And you can potentially cover a pile once out there versus having to cover and uncover it. So there's got to be some way of separating this, because this is being done for the right reasons, and this is being done in an environmentally friendly way. This is not liquid manure that's trying to be stacked up. This is dry manure that does not run. And if you put this in the right place, it's really hard for it to do bad things. And we're causing potentially a lot of costs that don't necessarily create hardly any environmental benefit. So those regulations are out. I know we just talked about it within the turkey folks actually yesterday. And I know there was a meeting with some cattlemen yesterday as well. And I think they're talking about, are there ways to be able to make it so that it works for each of the industries. There were some real, the rest of the folks probably know, there were some real iterations last year, and it was on and it was off, and you had to have a building, you didn't have to have a building. Even if you had a building, you had to have concrete underneath, even though on the road you get dried litter to run if you don't ever put any moisture on it. And it ended up being that folks that even wanted to figure out how to do it at any expense couldn't figure out what was really going to be okay in another 6 months or 12 months. And you're trying to build a building, you got to do something. You got to figure out where that litter is going to go. And so that was not a good process. It was also all the way down to the final week of the session. There was going to be some legislation on it. That finally got pulled at the very end, so it went to this rulemaking process that we're in the midst of now. And I hope it's going to be all done in the next, before session. It's supposed to be all done before session, which is, another 2 or 3 months. I think we're getting closer. I think from a turkey perspective, it looks like it certainly does all it needs to environmentally, but it probably also is manageable potentially. Hope. Other questions?